In our work session, Thursday, May 25th, 2023 at 11 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors Executive Conference Room, 1415 Melody Lane, Building G, Bisbee, Arizona. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion. Roll call, District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2.
Supervisor English is present.
And District 3, Supervisor Judd is here. The work sessions are, don't know where I am. Members of the public may also attend this meeting via Microsoft Teams computer or mobile app or via phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714. Conference ID 894-946-546#. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comments will not be taken. Introductions, in the meeting room here we have several members of the staff, and if you are going to participate in the program or have something to add, please just announce who you are. But last time it got a little too much, so if you feel like you need to say who you are, say it. Some of us are just normal and always here, so that's not necessary. Okay, so today our item for discussion is budget work session discussion of county funding request, expense, and revenue projections for fiscal year 23-24. And Richard Karwachka, our county administrator, will be giving the presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Chair, Supervisor English, Supervisor Crosby. So this is our yearly budget work session, and I've been working with Juan Frisbee, our budget manager, and he'll be also presenting during this work session. So the first that we want to talk about is gathering all the information that you've seen piecemeal throughout as elected offices have come and made their requests. So the first thing that we want to talk about is the funding requests. The first are the operational funding requests that you've seen from elected officials, and this is an opportunity that present some information about departments that and directors that report directly to me. So the first, as you see on top of here, is our finance and for Gravity software and financial advisory services. This will help support our finance department. Monica Miranda, she's here, and thank you for coming. But also, and she's done a wonderful job, and she's also doing a great job of trying to introduce and streamline things better for our audit for next year. And these two services, the Gravity software and also our financial advisory services that we're going to contract with, will help in that process. Also, you can see here the treasurer's requests for professional services. Now, these are professional services that she uses for title services. Normally, she does a great job of absorbing and moving things around so that she's never over budget. This line in particular has always been under budgeted, so she made the request this year to budget it appropriately for that line. And during the county attorney's presentation, they've requested an additional $30,000 for prosecution costs. From the health department, there have been increased expenses. There's been a $27,000 increase for funeral home contract expenses, $118,000 for detention medical. We've had a hard time securing services in the jail medical nursing field, and so we've been having to contract out a lot and provide services. So that $118,000 is reflected of that. Also, with the $8,000 increase in the mental health services, that is with our contract with CBI. So we've utilized them and had more need to utilize them. So that $8,000 increase is for that reason.
So we already pay them, if that was a question.
Correct, yeah. So
we already paid them. This is just additional.
This is additional. Okay. During the court's presentation, they made a couple requests. One was for their strategic plan. This previously was approved by the board. It's for $75,000. It was approved prior to COVID, and then COVID hit, and they put it on the back burner, and we're focusing on a lot of other things that were going on, especially in the court system. So they're making that a request again, is to have that funded. Additionally, courtroom audio visual. So Judge Ward currently his audio and visual equipment is down in his courtroom. So this is what the cost would be, to one-time cost of $82,000 and the maintenance agreement of $7,900 to maintain it. The sheriff's office also came and made several requests. One of them was for professional services for the animal shelter, the body cam and taser replacements, the additional cost for extraditions, and for training. We also heard from the constable's office. So this is a request simply for the radios, laptop, fleet, cell phone, the equipment that they would need to function in their office. Additionally, from our developmental services, the bigger costs are from the mower deck and also a tractor that is to cut, which is our responsibility to mow the grass around that area. And they've done an excellent job till this point to keep things up and running, but it's time that we have to actually replace that equipment. The other thing is for $150,000 for the remodel of the Wilcox Airport. We've seen dramatic improvements, and I know it's taken quite a bit of time to get the BDI one remodeled, so I'm hoping that it's not going to take the same length of time to remodel the Wilcox Airport. Moving on, unless anyone has any questions about the operational funding requests.
I had a question about the courts audio-visual.
Yes.
Are we buying that from the state? It seems like the state says that they're in charge of their own equipment for all of the courts.
Yes.
So how does that, are we buying it from them, letting them install it? How does that work?
No, from my understanding, the court does have their separate IT services. And we've contracted with a third party, and those were the quotes that came back and the one to replace it. So we're not going through the state, but unfortunately their court IT personnel is familiar with what state and what mixes with the county. So it doesn't fall directly under RRT, county services. So we're not buying it from the state, but it includes the court IT personnel, if that hopefully answers your question.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. All right. So no, we're not buying it directly through the state.
Does the state provide that for some courts?
Not that I'm aware of.
So even if they did have units available to install, we would pay the amount to get them anyway.
Correct. We got to pay for that equipment.
Okay.
But if I didn't answer your question, please follow-up question that I can provide you with better.
Well, it's very confusing, that they say that they have the oversight of all of the IT for the courts, that yet you're coming to us and wanting us to spend $82,000. Are we putting it in their budget so that they can pay $500 a piece of equipment like they do on everything else? And you said no, it's a third-party thing?
Right.
So that's where I'm a little confused.
And you're not the only one, and typically it's situation by situation. So one thing that you're referring about is Adobe Pro. So there was a software issue that we wanted to resolve, and that would include all the justice courts receiving this Adobe Pro software. So I contacted Joe Casey from our IT services to see if he was able to do that. He was, but upon further conversations with the courts, they said, we can't go through our county IT services. We'd have to go through the state to purchase that software and have that installed. So it is case by case, and this is where we have to purchase the equipment. And the only thing that we would have to adjust is the annual cost for maintenance is, yes, we would add that to the court's budget.
So we buy it, but we pay them every year for it.
We for the maintenance. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's our equipment.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Supervisor Crosby, did you have any questions? Okay.
I'm with you, and I'm taking prodigious notes.
All right. Thank you. So, and then the second part where the request that you heard is the funding requests for personnel. Mr. Leitendecker, the assessor, came and made several requests, or made a request for market increases in the amount of $260,000. From the elections department, which falls under Recorder Stevens, he's asking for half-time, 0.5 full-time employee, part-time employee. That's redundant. It's a full-time employee. It's FTE, but it's a part-time employee that he's looking for. And he's looking for a part-time employee for elections purposes. And that was requested for $20,000. The county attorney's office has requested a full-time employee, a full-time attorney, and a paralegal. And also they've requested a reclass of a position that would be an increase of $12,000. The other two that are next from the courts were full-time employees that have always existed, but they've been paid out of a special revenue. And so Justice Court 5, which is Sierra Vista, and 2, which is Benson, they were asking for this to be covered by the general fund at this point in time. And the reason why is that special revenue comes out of the fees and fines that are charged by the courts and their collecting of them. However, that has changed over the past couple of years, and they're collecting less fees and fines, and that's where these positions were being paid out of. So they're asking this year to absorb these into the general fund.
And that was changed by the legislature.
Correct. Well, the legislature and the Superior Court, Arizona Office of Courts, about what their mindset is about collecting fees and fines and the repercussions. So they're no longer the ramification, and the ones that I think the courts use often is that if you didn't pay your fine on the ticket, your license would be suspended. Well, they no longer have that to dangle over people to pay their fines. So people just have tickets. They don't have their license suspended, and we are collecting less and less fines. So,
well, and they use the term debtor's prison, so they're trying to get away from putting people in jail because they can't pay their fines.
correct.
Certainly they can't pay them near jail or prison.
Right.
So,
Right. That is exactly true.
so it's a double-edged sword,
Yep. Also, the courts put together a request for a reclass of all their positions and also a market adjustment. Now, some of these increases that were requested for, we encompass everyone in these market compensation plan that we've done. And so I kind of want to move on to kind of talk about the market. No, actually, before I do that, let's talk about the general fund expenses. But I just wanted to say before we move on, I will cover all these market increases. They were considered when we were doing the market compensation plan, not their specific requests, but we did examine all their positions to look for what the market compensation has increased for all those.
So it might overlap then.
Yes.
This table we're looking at might overlap with our
Correct.
increase.
It does.
As a question later, so go ahead.
I have a question. We've had significant problems in the clerk's office
Yes.
of her indicating that the people in her department are not being paid appropriately and are always leaving to go to another county office. And so I'm wondering if these reclassing of positions is specifically for the clerk's office, or are they trying to reclass the head of a department or whatever, because we've got to focus on those positions that we keep having 50% turnover.
Correct. Yeah. And so some of it is about reclassing positions and to making sure that people are getting paid for what the job they're actually doing, which I don't think in the past they were doing. There was general categories of clerk 1, and however, we're a small county, and I think Mr. Leitendecker kind of explained that in his presentation. Since we're a small county, a lot of people do a lot of different things, so we can't be fit into this one box.
Right.
So I think people are doing a better job of trying to appropriately classify what people do by their actual jobs, and which will change the category. So some of it does encompass it. I can't say it all encompass it, but I know that's been an effort this year to kind of address that situation so that the clerk's office is not a starting ground and a short transition to another county job and another department. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about new general fund expenses. Recently, in our last regular board meeting, you saw that we did a request for $500 and some thousand for the Altex, and that's was an increase last year. But this year, there's going to be another increase. It's not as big as last year's, but $267,600. There was a slight increase into our CCOM budget of $26,178. Utilities have gone up, and I think everyone understands that, and Mr. Mraz did a good job of explaining some of the reasons why the utilities are going up. The judges' salaries, this is unique, but this we won't see this year after year. It's just, I think it was a year ago where the legislature changed the salary structure for the judges, and now they put it incrementally. So this was the new information of their increases that we received from the courts. Also, health benefits, as we've talked about, we did a good job of adjusting things so that county employees don't feel this huge increase for our health benefits. But there is a increase of health benefits of about $500,000. I anticipate there'll be another increase next year for health benefits, but hopefully not as huge as this. CSA, as our County Supervisors Association, I think most of everyone has been involved in those conversations. That would be the increase of $33,000. Fleet operations, there is an increase of $217,000. And as I always enjoy Juan Frisbee, he throws in random things into the budget, and he's like, the board members need to be aware of this. So the Arizona Department of Revenue, there's a $6,000 increase for software. As we talked about software from somewhere else, this is something we have to have and we have to pay for. All right, now let's talk about, I think, what most people are interested in is the market compensation plan. Historically, since you saw fiscal year 18, there's always been a push to increase market compensation and to pay employees appropriately according to the market, because we need to be competitive at some fashion. We can never be more competitive than the private sector. That's impossible. But if we don't do anything, we fall behind. So for FY18, 19, 20, we increased our market compensation for $1 million that was dispersed throughout the whole county. FY21, this was the year of COVID, where we put the brakes on everything, just to say we're not doing anything, because we didn't know at that point in time what effects, and the effects that we thought were going to be dramatically negative. So we didn't make any market plan increases. In FY22, we started up again with $1 million. Last year and this year, we've seen dramatic jumps in market compensation, something that I think historically has never been seen before. People's salaries are being increased so dramatically. And last year, we did something we've never done before, which we increased $1.8 million for the market compensation plan that was dispersed throughout the county. So that's what historically we've done. Now, when we were examining this year's market compensation plan, and if we move to the next graph, if we do nothing, if we do what we did in the COVID year and provide no additional amount of money for a market compensation plan, we fall behind 6.7%. Just by standing still, we're falling back so far that it's just amazing to see when we were looking at the numbers and they're finally coming in. I'm just so how much everything has just increased. And I know people feel that at the grocery stores, the gas station, everywhere else. But when we're trying to be competitive, and we're always trying to be competitive, we're trying to do the best we can. And I think in the county, we do something that's very unique, speaking with other counties, is that a lot of times people just pay 2% increases, 3% increases. We actually value employees, and it's performance-based. So not only do these market compensation, but we give the discretion to elected officials, our directors, to make those adjustments so that our hardworking employees, they can get paid at a different rate. So moving on, what are projected county market plans? Now in the past, and I've talked about it, we try to shoot for 96% of the market. However, the market has increased so much that I don't think that can be our goal anymore. Because if you look at this chart, if we try to go for that number of 96% of market, then we'd have to add to our market compensation plan $2.8 million and disperse that throughout the county. That's $1 million more than last year. And I know Juan is going to talk about the revenues shortly, but looking at the overall picture, we cannot afford to have that as our target anymore. The target for that we can plan for and actually be okay with is 94%, which is still an increase from last year. Last year we dispersed $1.8 million. This year, if the board approves, we can disperse $2 million. So even though it's an increase, the market, as you can see, has increased so much that our goals, we have to readjust, because we have to readjust based on what we see as our projections for the revenue. However, I did put, and I wanted to show the bracket right next to what our percent of market is and the market, or the amount. In order to reach or try to go to our goal of 96%, it's attainable, but it's attainable only if we increase our property tax rate. And that's what that 2.52%, if we wanted to attain our 96%, we'd have to increase our property tax rate 2.52%, which is a 0.067 increase. If we wanted to be 100% of market, now we're talking about $4.2 million added to the market. You're talking about a property tax increase of 7.57%. And I've said this before, it really is unattainable for our county to be 100% of market. We're trying to be as competitive as possible. I don't believe the right solution is not doing anything, because we'll fall further and further back. We try to do what we can, and I think an attainable goal is 94%. With that, I'll take any questions.
I think that department heads and staff needs to understand that, you know, when there's a limited amount of money, you can either have a limited adjustment, which is what's being proposed here, or you can reduce staff. You'd have more money to distribute among fewer people. But I think that we're at the point here at the county where we don't have excess staff. And so it isn't a matter of saying, well, you know, you cut 2 positions and you cut, you know, 3 positions, and proportionately to get us to where you could give more money to those that are left. So when people propose that to us, it's without the knowledge of the fact that, you know, I think we're already bare bones.
Yeah, and there were dramatic cuts to our full-time employee number back in 2009, I believe. I think that was from 1,200 down to 800, you know, 850.
And we did it through attrition, you know, not by saying, you know, you lose 2 and you lose 4. You know, it was a matter of, you know, as they just weren't replaced. So.
And And
I think the public says those kind of things. Is what I'm saying is that department heads need to understand that I don't think that's a philosophy that I'm willing to subscribe to.
But yeah, I'm not either. But I would like to keep the tax rate the same. I'm not comfortable with raising the tax rate right now. I mean, it may come in a year or two that it looks like we have to, but right now, I think people can be satisfied with 94% for now. At least we're not falling down the 7.5%. 6.5%, 6.7, almost 7% by doing nothing. You know.
No, and that's absolutely right. And the thing is, what we don't want to put ourselves in a position is stretching too far and then having to retract that or eliminate positions. The overall goal is to make sure we are working hard and we are bare bones and to keep pushing and award those hard workers, but not put ourselves in a position where we do have to eliminate positions or somehow take back increases that we've already promised people.
I think it's important that we're supplementing healthcare too.
Yeah.
In a way that's helpful to the average worker in the county.
Yeah.
But we need to help them to understand that, because many times, because they're not paying it, they don't realize the significant cost to the county of not pushing that burden onto them. And
so in a sense,
so they're
more money
complaining about, no, I don't get a raise, but well, do you want a raise that we then take away by charging you more for your health care?
Right.
I mean,
that is very good to explain, because they don't realize that when you're like,
right.
Oh, well, I'm paying the same as I was last year, or just slightly more if you chose different things. But it could be dramatically more. And then people would be more upset, be like, okay, great. You gave me this raise. That's eaten up by the stuff I have to pay for benefits. So,
well, I think we were one of the few counties that when there was a downturn, we didn't turn people away. We didn't freeze their salary. In other words, we kept moving forward. And I think that's the trajectory that we try to stay on, is not to get ourselves into too much hot water, so that if there's a downturn, we've got to make dramatic changes. And that's when you really start to invade people's lives.
Right.
So
I have a comment or two.
Yes.
First of all, Ms. English's comments are well taken regarding the personnel reclassification in the court positions. Next, the inflation adjustment that I will consider is the one that comes from property valuation, and that's going to be the assessor's office. In my opinion, as I've said before, you don't give the government an inflation adjustment. I believe it is cutting taxes that increases jobs. I think economic laws are like the laws of physics, and you do not violate them without consequences later. Broadening the tax base should mean more private enterprise making more money, not taxing more things. The private enterprise sector must precede government growth. Our friend Mr. Karwachka mentioned falling behind the market, but the way to really fall behind the market is by increasing taxes more than what the economy grows and discouraging the growth that we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Crosby.
You're welcome.
Is there any more questions regarding this?
I don't have any more questions. I want to make sure that I reiterate that too. We don't want to increase taxes to take care of our own. And now we'll talk about property taxes and increased valuations, which isn't the same.
Right. And
I just want to say that.
Yes. And with that, I will now pick it over to Juan Frisbee, our budget manager.
One.
So Juan Frisbee, budget manager. I just want to point out on this chart, I did notice a mistake I made that I'll correct after this meeting. It says FY24 levy. That's the FY23 levy of $27 million. And this is, so the increase in levy for FY24 is 28.7 million. due to the new construction and inflation of 623 and 749. And as mentioned, that right, if you see the chart, that's the split we have. It's a 2.2% and a 2.6 increase in valuations. Then, yeah, that's our property tax. Next up is our projected revenue, county sales tax, which is going to be 8.5, small increase for next in comparison to last year. Well, this year, FY23. Same with state sales. We're also expecting a small increase on state sales tax from 15 to 15.5. HERB is not expecting that big of an increase. I mean, it's a small 0.6 or like from 10.5 to 10.6 for this year. And yeah, according to the charts I've analyzed, I'm expecting around this amount, but not more. And to finalize what we have left for upcoming is the tentative budget is going to be on June 13th, and our final budget will be on July 11th. Property tax rate gets adopted on August 21st.
So yeah, on August 21st is the day that when we talk about the actual tax rate and the levy. Any questions regarding the projection?
I don't. Can you just mention the truth in taxation hearings and why we have them and when we have them?
Absolutely.
For me and for people who might be listening.
Great question. So anytime there's an increase in the tax rate or the levy, anytime an increase, there has to be a truth in taxation here. So even if the county decides to, we budget for a flat tax rate, but there's increased assessed values, that means an increase in the levy. So no matter what, if the levy is increased, how we get there, we have to then notify the public of that increase. And then we have to not only notify them, give an opportunity to speak before we move into any kind of action. So it's not just what some people think. It's only if you increase the tax rate. Nope, not at all. So if the levy increases in any matter, we have to go through that process, which is statutorily mandated by us, which is a good way to say, hey, public, there's stuff going on here. Please submit your comments. Please be aware of it. Be as transparent as possible. Any other questions?
Making sure there wasn't anything in here.
Okay.
Mr. Crosby, is there anything else you'd like to?
Yes, indeed,
Any
Mr.
questions you have?
Karwashka. What if you happen to know the ARS statute for our friends in the audience that talks about the truth and taxation statute? And if you don't have it off the top of your head, I'd appreciate you sending it to me when you can.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do not have that one on top of my head.
I understand.
But I will send you that information.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
When are we going to hear about the PSPRS issue, and when might we see a new and improved, updated PRS and Corp multi-line graph?
So we are focusing on the budget currently, so I will get together with Mr. Frisbee early next week, and we can get you that timeline and information.
Okay. Yeah, I'd also like to see a line on that graph for lower earnings than I guess the previous lowest earnings was 5.3%, and we might see significantly lower earnings or even negative earnings. So I'd appreciate more information on that too. Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Superintendent English? I don't have anything else. I just want to thank you. This is all things we can take back and think about, and we will. Well, actually, I do have a question because you never went back to the increases in We went to market. You talked about
Yes.
market overall, but we have some requests. And some we're asking for, the courts in particular, we're asking for adjusting their employees, reassigning their employees, but also a market increase.
Right.
So when that's duplicated like that, what does that mean?
So we focus on our market compensation plan, but that doesn't mean we disregard their requests. We look at their requests and their reclassifications to try to encompass them. So there is no overlap. So, there is overlap, but maybe not to the extent that they're requesting.
Okay. So we'll make sure that they're whole, they're made whole, but their numbers might not be exactly what they've asked for.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Because our market increase might cover some of that.
It is, and then also if we adjusted our goal to 96% and 94%, that changes as well.
Well, I heard statements from Ms. Judd, certainly didn't hear from Mr. Crosby, that they were not willing to raise the rate. So are we producing a budget based on the current rate so that they can be comfortable, or?
That's the understanding from what I've heard today.
Because what we're looking at here is some of the requests would require more money.
Correct. So we're going to work on presenting a tentative budget that would incorporate a flat tax rate, or not increasing our tax rate.
Well, I just was saying that because I think the employees need to hear that. If that's going to be their stand, then
yeah, naturally we did collect more money. There's more revenue to be collected because of inflation and what was the other thing you said? Oh, new build,
Yeah.
which there's plenty of in the county. If I could just say that, I'm really excited when I see new businesses going up, new homes. You just see them on the street corners. There's a new home in our little towns even. So there's a lot of new build.
So that's my understanding from what I've heard today, is that we're going to focus on putting together a budget around that and do that presentation for the tentative budget.
I have a question, and that is what benefit for our budget may we see by virtue of the state court system taking over some of the funding for probation officers? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so there's no, at this point in time, taking over from the state. I know there was increases from the legislature to compensate for salary differences for probation, but they're not taking over our probation department of saying we're going to be covering the costs. That's been an ongoing discussion, at least in the recent years, because there is a split on what costs the state pays compared to the county, and the county has been carrying the burden quite a lot. So there hasn't been a shift in that cost percentage.
Okay, so there's no
I think what
benefit
you
to
saw,
it.
Tom, was the fact that they're giving money, but it was based on the fact of money that the county has already spent. And so they're backfilling rather than going forward. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah, I remember the discussion. I didn't remember all the details about it or the particulars as far as percentages and so on. So I just wanted to know if there was a benefit, but it appears there is not a benefit to us.
And typically there wouldn't be, because even if, let's say, the legislature's like, yes, the state will now provide all the funding for probation department, they will still ask us to make a contribution, kind of like with the long-term care of saying, you have this many probation people, we have to pay out this. You're not paying them directly. They're no longer county employees, they're state employees, but you need to contribute as a county X amount of dollars to offset that. So they're not going to give a windfall to the county where they'll say, we'll pay for all your probation officers, you don't need to pay for that, and that savings is yours.
What government will pay for their benefits and set their salaries?
Well, we currently do as the county, but if they decided to take over, then they would decide that.
Okay.
But they would charge us.
But
Yeah.
we would still pay.
We would still pay. We would still pay, but we no longer would make decisions as to benefits of what is offered or what their salaries are. The state would decide that.
Okay, well, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
In particular, the retirements.
Yep.
Well,
Okay.
have you finished all your presentations, and are there any other comments by the board members?
I have a comment, and I'm wondering about the new positions. Is there a way to stop any new positions until all the positions are filled already? Because I think that in the county attorney's office, they have positions they can't fill, attorneys.
So there is. We can put those positions in, and on the county side, once the position is filled, then we can transfer over the money.
Well, and the reason I say that is because of what has happened in the past. If we put money in their budget and they don't spend it for a particular thing, then they feel like that's free money they can spend on something else. And so whether it's, extraditions or body cameras or whatever, if we put it in their line item, if they choose not to do that, they'll spend it on something else. And so if we're looking at being truly, making sure that everything is spent the way it's supposed to be, then I don't think that we can continue to allow them to have just a pot of money. And if they don't fill that position, well, then they can use it to add to somebody else's salary, as they've done in the past.
So you can appropriate the full-time employee or position control number, so you can allocate that to the department.
Right.
And then once that's filled, then we can shift the money over to their budget.
That's not the way it's always done. Should we make a note
No.
for that?
Yeah, no, typically is that if you agree to a position, you fully fund that and add that to their budget.
And then they do whatever they want to with it.
So we need to make it so that it moves when they do fill the position.
Right.
Contingent, I guess, upon them filling. Okay.
You can absolutely do that.
Thank you. That was a good suggestion, Supervisor English. Okay. I think we're done. If there's no one else to speak up, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. First, let me tell you about the next meeting. It will be today at 1 p.m. in the Board of Supervisors hearing room for a Cochise County Jail District Board of Directors meeting for the special election canvass. And now I will adjourn. Thank you.